The meeting is live. It's all yours, Mr. Ellison.
Oh, we're good. Okay. I call to order the Williamsport City Council meeting of Thursday, August 6, 2020. It's a little past 6:30 p.m. We're meeting remotely through Zoom. We'll move to item 1, approval of City Council minutes dated 7/23/20. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any corrections from council? No corrections or questions. Mrs. Frank's still here, so we'll call the vote on that. Mrs. Frank, please.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Item 2, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests tonight. We'll move to item 3, appointment zoning hearing board. And up tonight, we have Hannah Darrow of 216 High Street being appointed to the 3-year term commencing tonight, August 6, 2020, and ending August 6, 2023. Welcome tonight, Hannah. Happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Happy for you volunteering on this important board. You did appear before the Finance Committee, so I'm going to ask Liz if she wants to and still here, or we'll go to
Wait,
Mrs. Mack.
Randy, Hannah didn't appear before the Finance Committee. I'm sorry.
I think it was Public Works.
Oh, Public Works. I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. Public Works. So Mrs. Katz.
Yes, I really was going to say that. Yes, we did have Hannah at Public Works, and we are really pleased with Hannah coming on board here. Her resume is incredible. I think she's going to be a fantastic asset to the commission, and she also has a business in the city. Let's get that out there. She has the Sawhorse Cafe on Washington Boulevard. But we asked her a couple of questions, whether, what she's prepared for and what her objectives would be. And I think Hannah is just the perfect fit for what we're looking for. And we're really pleased and thankful to have her on board. Adam, Vince, do you have anything to say?
No, I just reiterate that I think Ms. Darrow is going to do a great job. I think she'll be a great asset.
Looking forward to your working with us, Hannah. We really are. Okay.
Thank you. Me too.
This is not a voting. We just, we do the interviews and we don't vote on this. We just welcome you with open arms.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Thank you very much, Hannah.
Yes.
Yep.
Did you have anything you cared to say, Hannah?
I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to getting to working with all of you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to need to be sworn in by Mrs. Frank at some point. So I'll leave it up to the two of you to schedule that when you can do that. Any other comments?
Hannah, just call Janice Frank with the city clerk. She's in City Hall a couple of days a week, and get into, make arrangements with her
Okay.
to be sworn in.
All right.
Randy, we do need a motion
Yeah.
and a vote on these.
Yeah, we're going to have a vote.
So move.
Second.
Is moving, did I hear a second?
Second.
Moved in
All
second.
over the place.
And we've all spoken our piece, so would you please call the roll, Mrs. Frank?
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too, thanks.
We're gonna move up item 10 next. And that is a lot addition subdivision. Mr. Nar.
Good evening, President Allison, members of council. What I present to you tonight is a subdivision request from McManus, Loman, and Bad to the Bone LLC. These three parcels are located north of East Willow Street in the city in the CS zoning district. This subdivision is merely a cleaning up of some zoning deficiencies. As you can see by your drawing, part of one of the parcels actually crosses over a building lot line. So what this subdivision will do is it'll basically align it so that it's not over a building. And at that point, also, it'll give all three parcels access, which is required under the zoning. In doing so, the parcel which is owned by Bad to the Bone Auto Restoration LLC, it is currently a non-conforming lot size. It doesn't currently meet it. And with this subdivision, it will be reduced even further. And at this point, it was reviewed by Lycoming County, and you do have comments. It was also reviewed by our planning commission. In regards to Lycoming comments, it does require a variance because you're reducing a lot size. It did go before our zoning hearing board last month, and the zoning hearing board did approve the variance. I do have a representative available. Again, this is merely just cleaning up some zoning deficiencies, which will at this point move the property line, not on the building, but within those areas. And also it'll allow all three parcels to have access from East Willow Street, which basically cleans up the zoning deficiencies. And I can answer any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nar. Are there questions from members of council tonight? Everybody clear on this? Mr. Banks?
Yeah, so, Mr. Nar, am I to believe then that not all three, no, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, not all three parcels had access?
Correct. Based off, if you look at the drawing, the way that it was, they didn't all have access. What this does is, from the main thing, as you can see, is over one of the lot lines of building. Zoning does not permit that. It's something that's kind of been grandfathered in. Also, each property is required to have access. This will give them complete access to East Willow Street so that in the future, if they go to sell the properties, they don't have to go through this process. It's just merely a cleanupping of zoning deficiencies.
Thank you, Mr. Nar.
Other questions or comments, council? If not, Janice is still here. Would you call the roll on this one? Is there a motion and a second from council? I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll, Mrs. Frank?
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We will move to item 11, certificate of appropriateness for 236 Basin Street, and Mr. Girardi.
Yes, good evening, President Allison, member of council. What you have before you is a certificate of appropriateness request for the property located at 236 Basin Street. They would like to put a business identification sign on their property. It's about 2'6" tall and approximately 22 feet long. It meets all the zoning requirements. If you remember, some of the council may remember probably 2 or 3 years ago, they came through for an appropriateness for a grayish blue painted building with black trim. This sign would fit in appropriately with the design of the building. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Questions or comments from council tonight? Mrs. Katz, did you have your hand up?
No, I was moving my screen.
Okay. Okay, I hear or see none. Or Mr. Polizzi, do you have your hand up? Okay,
Yes, sir.
I feel like I'm an auctioneer and when people go like that, I'm ready to.
$2. I'll go $2.
Yeah, there you go. Could we have a motion and a second on this?
Second.
Motion and a second. Mrs. Frank, would you take the vote on this, please?
Mr. Schroeder,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Yes, for me, Janice.
Mr. Ross,
I think that was me. Yes. It sounds to me like the motion passed 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Actually, I think we should move to item 9. Mr. Kaiser's here tonight on this one. So let's move item 9 up. And could you read that in short form, please, Mrs. Frank?
resolution approving the professional engineering services proposal for the scoreboard design, bidding, and limited construction consultation for the new exterior video scoreboard at historic Bowman Field prepared by Larson Design Group.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Okay, Mr. Sanders.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. This is a proposal from Larson Design Group to design, bid, and have limited, very limited construction consultation for the new scoreboard at Bowman Field. The project was backed by Senator Yaw, resolution from 2 months ago, and we have to put it up. So this contract with Larson will be for $93,000, and it includes everything to prepare the contract documents and bidding documents to deliver the project to the crosscutters in the city of Williamsport, including geotechnical investigation for to make sure the foundation is supported properly. And they have a specialty firm that will design, deal with the scoreboard itself, the audio video broadcast system. In addition to that, they will, like I said, bid it out on their external website. And any questions or issues that come up during the bidding will be sent to the city and the crosscutters, where we can collaborate on an answer. And during construction, there's money in here for very limited shop drawing review during that stage, and that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sander. This was reviewed in Public Works.
Yes, it was.
Yep.
This was reviewed by Public Works and we passed it on with a positive recommendation. We did have a good discussion. Gabe Sinacropi and Digestes was also at the meeting. So we were able to get some information from them. This is the third time going out with this. After we learned why and how, we found this was the best route to go. Because the crosscutters, even though they will have input into this, there's a third party coming into play here that is their specialty is scoreboards. When it comes to setting up the scoreboard, whatever company is chosen, these companies always have their own engineers that will place the scoreboard and also do the training. So having Larson Design coming up with this, and going through the process is the best process that we could go through at this point. The company, I don't know that, Chris, I don't know the name of the company that's going, the third party that's involved in this. But they're the ones that are really going to do the specs for this, right, Chris? And you're on mute, Chris.
Yeah, that is correct. I just wanted to wait for you to finish. Good evening, everyone. Yes, we've consulted with a group called Henderson Engineers. They came to us recommended from Populous Design, who did a lot of the work leading up to the Bowman Field renovations. So both their specialties are sports, and Henderson Engineers, they do a lot of scoreboard and digital displays and things like that. So we brought them on as a sub-consultant to do the interior, so to speak, the bells and whistles of the scoreboard itself.
Which is going to be necessary with this, because this is not your average push a button here and it's going to be, everything's going to work. There's a lot of training involved in this, which we've already put into process with the Bowman Field, with the city as far as permits go, with the usage of the scoreboard, because this is more complicated than what we have right now. The other thing that the crosscutters did ask for is not to destroy the old scoreboard, because we don't know where everything's going to be at this point, how long it's going to take in the process. But they would like to start this as soon as possible. Chris, how long do you think this will take?
I would have to pull the schedule. Obviously, we had a pretty advanced schedule in looking.
I have it in front of me, Chris, if you want me to spout off some dates here.
Yeah.
Sure. Project award, July 23rd. Obviously, we're at August 6th, so a couple of days late there. But then major items would be have all the bids together, or excuse me, all the documents together by September 25th, 2020. Advertise the project on October 11th and open the bids at the end of October. And
the goal was to get it out and get it awarded before the end of 2020. So that way contractors could obviously order materials and have a winner as those materials are ordered and then ready to go as soon as the weather allows.
There was some concern. There was some concerns, Chris. Go ahead. Sorry, Bonnie.
What we talked about with the crosscutters is we really don't know where they're at. They don't know where they're going to be next year. Everything's up in the air with MLB. But one of the prospects could be that they would be starting games maybe as early as April. And I think they're really hoping that the scoreboard will be up and running at least by that time. So hopefully we can accomplish that. Mayor, did you have conversations with them about this?
With the crosscutters?
Right, that they're, we're up in the air with them, but there's going to be something going on in the field next year. And they might, and from what I understood from the conversation is that there could be games starting as early as April.
Yeah, that's just, as Mr. Sinacopri said during the committee meeting, it just depends on obviously the negotiations with minor league baseball, Major League Baseball, and obviously the unknown factor of COVID at this point. So they could be starting earlier. That's one of the options on the table. And hence the reason they asked the old scoreboard to stay in place if we could for the moment. If the games do start early, they have a scoreboard to use while the new one is being constructed. So at this point, I've been in regular contact and it's just a waiting game at this point.
I think the public really, because we all have gotten questions about spending money on the scoreboard if we don't know where a team is going to be. But we've been reassured by Gabe Sinacropi that we're going to have something that they're going to be doing. It may not be the crosscutters; they don't know yet. We do still have 2 years for the classic, so MLB will be doing the classic for 2 years, which is terrific. But I know the public would just be feel comfortable knowing that there will be some ball games being played somehow, somewhere.
Correct. And I spoke with the Crosscutters ownership, and they have no plans to move the team out of Williamsport.
Which is fantastic. Other than that, like I said, we pass this on to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. Adam, Vince, did you have anything to add to this?
Mr. Banks had his hand up, but do you mind if we go to Dave? Yes.
So Adam, did you have your hand up?
I did. I'll yield to Councilman Banks though first. I think he was ahead of me.
Thank you, Mr. Yoder. Mr. Pavlik, are you there? Could you just run us through the funding on the city side for this?
Yeah, this won't come from the RACB project itself. This is going to be outside that. We've discussed this with our consultant, and then our intent is to use Act 13 funding from prior year surplus.
And to that effect, is that pooling from something else?
It is not. It's money that's been received above and beyond prior budgets. So it's just kind of sitting out there to be utilized towards future projects. So it's something that the Crosscutters were concerned that we were going to tap into the full RACB budget, and we indicated to them that we were not.
Thank you.
Mr. Yoder.
Yeah, thank you. Now there were three initial concerns that I at least had back in, what was it, 2 months ago when this initially came forward. I think this coming forward addresses one of them and making sure that the right people are in the right places. So I appreciate the administration looking at this and moving forward with this. Bonnie, can you confirm, or Mayor Slaughter, so it sounds like we have a firm commitment from the Crosscutters that they will be here over the next number of years in some capacity. We don't know what yet, I understand that, but that they will be here.
This is what this is what Gabe and Doug said. I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead, Councilwoman. That's fine.
This is what they discussed at the meeting, that some way, somehow, there's going to be ball players. They may not be the Crosscutters. That's not a guarantee, but there might be another form of ball teams. And, they're still working out the process here. Yeah. We're still waiting, but at least we know we're going to have teams there.
Yeah, so we have ownership commitment that there will be baseball there over the next number of years, regardless of if it's the Crosscutters or a different team or what have you. Okay. That was the second big question I had. The third question, a couple months ago, we didn't have the local match shored up where it was coming from. Do we have that shored up where that's coming from? There was $600,000 that is required of us to match.
We do. That's going to come from a combination of the general fund, the Bowman Field account, and then previously spent funds to come up with that commitment. I believe back in 2019, there was a plan to borrow an amount to count towards that match. And I think it was Councilwoman Neely who indicated that she wasn't comfortable with borrowing, along with probably other council members. So there was a plan to set aside $50,000 a year to come up with that additional piece that was missing. We feel that we've tucked away between last year and the current year 120 of that, and we're looking to do another future commitment in next year to come up with that. It was originally proposed to come from Act 13, but due to Act 13 not being eligible for matching funds, being state matching state, we've swapped street money between the two funds in order to be able to come up with that commitment.
How much is coming from what line item?
It will be budgeted in the Bowman Field account, in the general fund. I don't have the line number in front of me right now, but it was 65,000 last year. It's 65,000 this year, and it'll be the same next year. Along
We're
with
essentially taking about $200,000 from Bowman Field.
the general fund, the Bowman Field account and the general fund. And that was
Joe,
swapping
Joe,
street.
how much is in the Bowman Field account? Do you know?
In the Bowman Field account, there's currently 175. This plan also commits next year's, some of next year's cross-cutter commitment and major league commitment towards this project.
Okay, so we're taking, repeat that for me, because I know Bowman Field is a line item in the general fund, but are there other areas of the general fund where we're pulling money from?
No, it's strictly from money that was set aside and reserved in 2019, money that was reserved in 2020, and then we'll be budgeting the final amount in the general fund in 2021.
And $100,000 commitment from the crosscutters as well.
$100,000 commitment from the crosscutters. The amount that's sitting in the Bowman Field account outside of the general fund, and around $50,000 from next year's cross-cutter and Major League Baseball commitments.
So I'm only at about $300-some thousand. What am I missing?
Well, it's you're at 130, 190 to the general fund. There's about 130,000 that's previously been spent. The $100,000 from the crosscutters, and $225,000 from the Bowman Field account, which includes next year's.
You're using the 100,000 from the crosscutters as a match?
Yeah.
Part of the money
That is a match.
aside.
That would bring it up to 400,000. What about you, Adam? That's what I'm coming up with.
Yeah, 400. It should seem, unless I'm missing or misinterpreting what you're saying, Joe. It
The
still seems like we're kind of a little bit short.
The 190 in the general fund, which is 3 years at 65, 195. 100 from the cutters is 295.
Yep.
$225,000 from the Bowman Field account, and then there's prior projects around 130, which included previous engineering and design work towards the previous projects.
Are we comfortable? Are we comfortable leveraging any kind of general fund money outside of the Bowman Field account for this, given over the next couple of years what we're going to be looking at fiscally?
Outside of the general, you're talking about the Bowman, you're talking the Bowman Field account?
No, not the Bowman Field account. You referenced 190 from the general fund over, I think, a couple of different years.
The way that money was set aside, there's already 2 years of the 65 set aside. The way that we offset that when it was initially proposed during the 2019 budget, it was to come from Act 13. When the consultants made that recommendation to the state, they indicated that they weren't comfortable with that, indicating that the Act 13 funding was actually state funds, even though they're from the gas wells. So they said that it wasn't an equitable or an allowable match. The way that we did that is we reduced the general fund streets to offset an increase in Act 13 streets, since we could use that money there. So the amount of the street projects in total would stay at the same level. We wouldn't be dropping anything off. We were just able to reallocate the source of funding for the street projects so that we had an eligible source towards this project. And I think the initial plan in 2019 was $50,000 over 5 years. So we're squeezing that down into a shorter time frame.
So what you're stating is that Act 13 money was swapped in to use for streets. And then you could use what was on the streets, that same amount of money, to use for the match for the scoreboard.
We reduced the streets in the general fund and increased Bowman Field in the general fund and did the flip on the Act 13 side.
Gotcha. Just wanted to clarify this for the public.
Again, there's no change in the total amount of funding for either a project. It was just the source that it was coming from.
Okay. Dave, do you have any questions from Public Works on this?
No, I don't at this time. I thank you, Joe, for clearing that up. I mean,
Vince?
I will say this. I mean, I'm not excited about pulling those general fund dollars. It doesn't sit well.
Yeah, I have my personal reservations, just a combination. I mean, we're realistically, it seems like pulling money from, or I shouldn't say pulling money, but I mean, we have street paving money involved, and I think a lot of constituents would much rather see streets paved. And just with the next couple of years, it's just any nickels and dimes we can find, I think are going to be useful. So that's, I'm not crazy about it either, but I appreciate that it's lined up nonetheless.
Mhm.
Joe, you said we're not going to lose streets, right? You said we're not going to lose any.
The street money will, the street paving money will stay the same as it would have been. We're just offsetting different sources for it. We're swapping
Yeah,
out.
but we can use Act 13 money for street paving directly, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, in essence, if we're moving Act 13 money over and we have general fund money in there, we could double down on streets. I mean, that's what I mean as far as, we're taking money away from potential street projects. We could do more on our streets than we were originally planning, is all I'm saying.
And again, this was the plan that was developed back in 2019 when the grant was awarded. We had to swap out the sources, be it Act 13 or general fund, in order to make the plan work. I think that it was council's expectation that we wouldn't borrow money for the project. We would do it within the funds that we had available. So therefore, we were spreading the initial amount that was intended to be borrowed of $250 over a 3-year period or 5-year period at that time. We are getting it done a little bit quicker. So, I mean, that's, I think, a good thing also.
Yeah, no, agree. Well, like I said, the 3 big questions I had in the previous vote, you've answered all 3 of them. And even though I may not like it or what have you, I will certainly appreciate you guys answering them and listening. So thank you very much and thank you for the clarity on the funding.
Are there any other questions or comments? I think, having seen this project from the beginning, I think it's important to put it into perspective regarding the timeline. Hindsight is 2020. Had we been able to foresee some of the things that have happened to drastically change everything this year, not just in finances, but in operations and everything, yeah, it probably adds to the sense of,
You can do it.
maybe this wasn't a top drawer item. However, when this first was approached, it was in the beginning of our brand new relationship with MLB. And that was a big win for the city, that they were holding the annual game here, and in their relationship with Little League. So that was the context that some of these changes to Bowman Field were discussed and looked at. The context is always perspective, and I think it's fair to say that it was a good project. in the context of the time we were looking at it. It had the backing of Senator Yaw. It had the backing then of the state. And everybody saw this as an enhancement to what MLB was doing and the millions they poured in to the field to bring that up to major league specifications, which is if they walk away, we still have a major league field, the Bowman Field, playing surface rather. So I think it's going to pay dividends down the road. We're not going to be caught in this forever, and things are going to find their way back to some kind of equilibrium where we'll be able to, I think, use this stadium, and it'll enhance other things in the city as well. So that's my only comment on the whole thing. Any other?
Hey, Randy.
Mrs. Katz, yes.
This is Liz, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, never mind. I apologize. Sorry. Bonnie, you get started.
One of the things I just wanted to bring up is that MLB still has their groundskeeper he's still working here. He has not left and he will not leave until we no longer have the Classic here. So he is taking care of the grounds and at their expense. That's one of the things that we've had is the perks from that.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding us of that, Mrs. Katz. Ms. Mealy?
Yeah, all I was going to say, Randy, from a historical perspective, is to second that. We had a lot of heavy discussions about this this investment in Bowman Field over a long period of time. And in fact, that was why I think Mr. Poplock mentioned how opposed I was to bank financing as part of this project. We have already put bank financing into this project, but I didn't want any more in it, precisely because if we're making an investment like this in an asset in the city that's geared toward, kind of a short-term project, I felt as though we didn't need 10 years worth of debt or 20 years worth of debt to continue with it. That said, this project has been in the works for a very long time now, and everybody will remember that we had an aborted bidding process on this scoreboard in the past. I do feel like we need to move forward with this at this point. Even though we're a bit in limbo, we did receive funding for it, and I think this is simply the right direction to go in.
Mr. Politi.
Thanks, Randy. Pardon?
Mr. Politi has his hand up. Thanks, Liz.
I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there, as I share Mr. Yoder and Mr. Banks' reservations the same way as far as where we're pulling the money from. I also want to share my own reservations regarding the process and how initially it was not put out for RFP or bid, but I do understand the length of time that this entire process has been going on, and actually the services that Lorson Design Group is going to be providing to us to speed this process up. But I would hope in the future, though, that in the sense of fairness and equal opportunity for everybody, that any of these projects moving forward will continue to, or will go out for bid or RFP. Definitely amidst what's happened with our economy due to the coronavirus, I think we certainly need to be cognizant of the future. And me, what's always back in my head is, how is this year going to affect all of our taxes moving into the next year and so forth. And so I'm just looking to save every penny that we possibly can for the benefit of our taxpayers. And I think that we all have that in our minds. Thank you.
Mr. Banks.
There's a question for Mrs. Katz, actually. Bonnie, could you refresh my memory on this? Did Mr. Sinacropi say the Classic is confirmed for next year?
Yes.
And the year after, or just next year?
No, next year and the year after.
Okay.
So the next 2 years.
In terms of the field getting use, we will get that use out of it in the very least, provided baseball still exists. but I would imagine, it's gone on for quite some time. It'll surge on. So for anyone's questions about whether or not the baseball field will be used, it will be used. In the very least for Major League Baseball.
Exactly.
Mr. Mackey.
I mean, I guess to that point, and President Allison, to your point about this field being an asset for the city, Mr. Mayor, maybe you can answer this question. Does Major League Baseball have a pretty big say in how we use this field? Because if I mean, that classic game, that's one game a year. And if we're sinking all this money into this stadium, I think we need to be having a conversation with Major League Baseball about how we're allowed to use our own field, in ways that we see fit. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you can dispel that, but.
They do have a say in the number of games that are to be played on the field. We are working, I said during the committee meetings on Tuesday, that our solicitors are currently in contact with MLB solicitors as to the future options of the extension of the Classic. But as of right now, yes, there is MLB definitely has a say in the number of games that are played on the field.
I mean, games aside, I'm talking about any type of event that we might want to hold at the stadium. I hope that you're having those conversations with Major League Baseball, that if we're going to be extending this 2, 3, 5 years down the road, that you're going to get some kind of commitment from Major League Baseball that says we can use this field as we see fit. We understand that you're taking care of it for one game a year, and we appreciate that, but you have to understand the money and the time that we've spent on the field, and we should be able to use it as we see fit. I guess is my point.
We've discussed that. We've had that conversation with the Crosscutters as well, since they have a lease on it as well. So it's also I think the conversation would need to be the city, the Crosscutters, and MLB, and to discuss the field usage. Some of those conversations, which have already begun.
Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, I see none. So we'll have the vote. Mr. Lubin, I believe.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder, Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Miss Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes. Motion passes 6-1. Thank you, Mr. Lubin. We have those ordinances, but I think we should move up to our resolution with the Williamsport Sanitary Authority. So we'll move, let's move up to item 6.
it's a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between city and the Williamsport Sanitary Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Lubin. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. This was reviewed by Public Works.
Yes, it was. We have been working on the MS4 permit for years, and this permit has gone through different stages. At one point, it was going through the county, and at this point, the Water Authority is taking care of it. And Wendy Walters is one of the ones who looks after our permit. This is very important. The MS4 is very important. It has the plan. We have so many things that have to be done according to the MS4 program. We have to look where our BMPs are, but this is also in conjunction with, we are going to be working with Loyal Sock and a company, and let me get the name of the company here. HRG is contracted to work with Loyal Sock and the city to make sure our MS4 is on track here. This has been done in conjunction because they do 65% of our BMPs. And this is where it's all stems from, that we have to make sure the permit is up to date. And I don't know when this is due. Wendy, could you please tell us when our permit is due?
Sure. Bonnie, your existing permit actually expired March of 2019. And in accordance with our current agreement with you, we submitted that application back in October of 2018. That application had a Chesapeake Bay pollutant reduction plan with it, incorporated with the application. It took DEP a year, but a year later they determined that it was deficient. So that permit hasn't been issued yet. They're waiting for a revision to the CBPRP, the Chesapeake Bay Pollutant Reduction Plan, which is the work that HRG is doing. Most of the work that HRG is doing is done. It's already in a draft format, and it's currently in the public comment period from August 3rd, I think, through September 2nd.
And that's on the website as well. Sorry, Ms. Walter.
Yeah. Yes.
It's on our website, and additionally, it's at City Hall for review, and it's additionally on Lowell Sox website and at their township building as well.
Yes. So I believe it's anticipated that once we submit the plan and it's reviewed, that permit will get issued then.
So the key thing to remember is once the permit is issued, we have 5 years to build those BMPs.
5 years, did you say, Michael?
Correct. The permit length is 5 years. So then the BMPs enumerated in that plan, we would have to build within that term.
Well, let's hope that from the, once this has gone through, that we don't have to put this off as long as we have before. I'm happy that we have a company that's working with this. And I think it's going to lessen the problems that we've had and the information that we need to move our permit forward. When that's done, I'm sure you'll be coming back to us and letting us know where we stand. And I know you're working with John Sanders on this also.
We've been working very well with the mayor, John Sanders, and Adam Winder to make sure it's guided through the process.
The next thing on the move will have to be stormwater.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be, we have to get moving on that because that's been sitting on an attorney's desk for what, 2 years at this point?
At least.
So once this is in the works, I think we really should start getting moving on that also.
I think there's unanimous agreement there.
I concur as well, John, by the way.
Yes.
The Water Authority has superior technology and some engineering folks and several people under them, the engineering department director, that do a fantastic job of mapping the entire system. So I agree.
It's another one of those legacy infrastructure things that have come due. That it's an issue that needs to be attended to, and it's happens to be on our watch. So we need to be diligent and responsible about that. Are there any other questions or comments?
I forgot to say that we did pass this on to the full body with a positive recommendation.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Katz. Everybody good with this? We have the resolution and the addendum to the professional service agreement. So do we need two separate votes, Mr. Lubin? Mr. Lubin?
Let me go check real quick on that.
Okay,
Mr.
thanks.
Logan. Give me one sec.
Randy, I was of the impression that these two were together.
That's what I thought, but they both have separate places for signatures. And I just,
We only worked on the one, Randy. We didn't work on two separates.
okay, but I just wanted to make that clear because they both have separate places for approval.
Again now.
Okay.
Hey, Norm's here now.
Okay.
Oh,
Norm, the resolution and the addendum do we have one vote on the two? Or do they need voted on separately? I just wondered because there's separate places for signatures on each. I'm not sure if that's just a clerical thing.
yeah, I don't see a problem with one vote.
Okay, great.
Because the resolution self-authorizes the signing of any necessary documents.
Which would be the addendum. Okay, then. We're done discussing this. So, Mr. Lubin, could we have the vote, please?
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lubin.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Winder. Is he here right now?
Yes, I'm here, Mr.
Oh,
Allison.
there you are. You're in the conference room. I see you have a number of people there, so perhaps we should move to that. I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I want to accommodate those who are not actually part of council. Let's go to item 7, resolution authorizing the execution of a contract agreement.
resolution authorizing the execution of a contract agreement between the City of Williamsport and the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1496.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Winder.
Good evening. This is a contract between the ATU Local 1496 and the City of Williamsport. It is a contract that, should it pass, would be retroactive to January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2024. The ATU has been operating at RVT without a contract since December 31st of last year. Myself, Chris Cooley, and Joellen sat with the ATU over the course of the last several weeks, negotiating what we felt was a fair contract for both sides. I do have the executive board from the ATU here to help answer any questions you may have when I'm done. And I see Joellen's up there. She can also jump in at any point. A true contract has not come before council since 2010. Complete contract. Everything that came before council since then was just amendments to the contract. So we're presenting a full contract, completely reviewed, and several changes. I'll hit the highlighted changes. So when we started negotiations, it was requested for a 5% increase over all the years of the contract. We settled for a 3, 3, 3, 2.5, 2.5. We cleaned up a lot of language in the contract. The union agreed to remove a 5-star program, as well as a $5,000 signing bonus. They agreed to pay into their health care on a tier system. 0 to 9 years would be 2%, 10 to 19 would be 1%, 20 years and above would be 0%. For all current employees, new hires would pay 3% and 5% of the difference between single and family coverage. New hires would not receive the $500 HRA. No insurance buyback should new hires choose not to accept the insurance. Sick leave buyback, the union requested $11,500 for 2020, 2021, $12,500, 2022, $13,500, 2023, $14,500, 2024, $15,500. We were able to negotiate it to holding it what it currently is from the 2019 contract for 2020, which would be $10,500. 2021, $11,000. 2022, $12,500. 2023, $13,500. 2024, $14,500. They also agreed to remove the $5,000 sign-on bonus, as well as the $1,000 referral bonus. Longevity, we just cleaned up language in that. So it was simpler to understand. Hospital coverage is basically, we just, as I went over, paying into the healthcare with the tier system and the new copay system for new hires. And they also agreed to no legacy benefits for new hires. That ends with all current employees. And we're open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Winder. You have several people there tonight with you. Would you care to introduce them?
I have Frank Perchinsky, the union president. Ray Johnson, the assistant vice president. Dorn, I'm not sure what your position. Dorn is the treasurer. Dom, executive board. Lenny Hallett, executive board. And Dwayne Forrest, treasurer. Or secretary, I'm sorry. They're confusing me here.
Okay, welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you for having us.
I'm gonna refer to Ms. Mealy. Finance reviewed this. Councilwoman Mealy.
Hi, Randy. Thank you.
Hi.
So finance did review this item on Tuesday. And as everyone may have read in the paper, we forwarded it to the full body of council with no recommendation. No recommendation was related. I think Councilwoman Katz started out the discussion and she had some questions about the insurance, the health insurance moving forward, legacy costs for the city, all the same questions that we always have about union contracts. And by and large, it was the opinion of the Finance Committee that the full body of council should have a robust discussion about contract negotiations for this year, not simply the RVT contract, but the other two contracts moving forward. I know that my feelings personally are that this that this is a good contract. Mr. Winder negotiated in good faith with the union at RVT. They made a number of concessions, as Adam has just explained. The concessions will total a benefit over the life of the contract of close to $700,000, which is not inconsiderable. Do we need to improve? Do we need to look for concessions from all of our unions this year? Yes, absolutely. Do we need to be going back to our unions to ask for to try to negotiate the best contract we can for the taxpayers of the city every time we negotiate? Yes, absolutely. All of that said, I think that this was a very good beginning with an organization that hasn't seen perhaps as much heavy negotiating as some of our other unions in the past. You know, as Adam said, the contract didn't even really come before council 5 years ago. One thing that I would like us to work on perhaps in the next iteration of the RVT contract, personally, once again, would be to shorten the span of the contract to 3 years like other city union contracts, just so that we don't have a year like this where we're dealing with multiple contracts, so that we can space them out so that doesn't happen. But as I said, we asked questions about healthcare, questions about the sick leave element of the contract, which is generous, and I'll leave it to other members of the committee to follow up on some of their concerns. But I think overall the impression is that this is a contract in which we've negotiated well from both sides, both the union and the city. And the hope is that we can achieve some of the same goals, different concessions, but achieve some of the same cooperation in our other negotiations that are yet to come this summer and later this year.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
Bonnie, Adam, thank you.
Honey?
Yes, we really did have a good discussion on Tuesday with this. If this contract came to us in January, there would have been no problem. But as it stands now, the mayor chose to not sign it in January, and now we hit the middle of COVID, where we don't know where we're going to stand next year as far as finances go. We've been saying this at every council meeting, that we might get through this year, but next year and the year after are going to be horrendous to try and cover all of our expenses. And with this contract, there are two things that I, for one, found a little bit disturbing under the circumstances. Any other time, like I said, this would not bother me. But under the circumstances, the next 3 years, there's a 3% raise, then 2.5%. Most of the time, everybody will get a 2.5 COLA. And with what's going on at this point, I cannot see where we are going to give raises even at this time. I think we have got to be careful where we go, how much money is spent. And I don't know, 3% to me for the next 3 years is wrong as far as everything is going right at this moment. That's only my opinion right now. The other thing that we have always talked about is legacy costs. And the legacy cost at this point is with the medical. Our medical insurance is our highest ticket item. And I know they're saying, we're being told that there are only a handful of people that are going to be retiring that will get these benefits, but a handful is still a lot of money when you figure out you're paying full insurance for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. That is, at this point, what we're trying to do away with, which you've already started that with the new hires. But even now, to do this now with people retiring with this new contract at age 65, we're talking you could be paying medical insurance for the next 20, 25 years. I mean, that's a long time to be paying. On a whole right now, per person, we're talking about $20,000 to $25,000 a year per person. That's a lot of money per person. So my question, is how do we cover these costs? Coming next year, the year after, being hit with COVID, if you want to look at it from a business point of view, we're not going to feel all these ramifications till next year and then the year after. And at this point, we have nobody going after any funds for anybody, for anything in this city for COVID. With all the money that's out there, that's not being accomplished, which I find interesting when you hear other cities getting money from Harrisburg, and we have nobody going after it. So therefore, we're really going to be strapped next year. And how do we budget all of this? So this is my say on this. I'll defer now to the rest of my members of council.
Mr. Yoder.
Can we jump in real quick and respond to Bonnie? Mr. Allison?
Yeah, if you
Okay.
can answer some of those.
Sure. First, as far as funding, RVT did receive $7.2 million in COVID money from the federal government and $2.5 million from the state government. So we did receive that. We also applied for a grant for RVT under the Hazard Pay Act for any employee under $20 an hour. We are waiting for answers on that. And I'm going to defer to Frank to talk about the legacy costs.
And one other
Let
thing
me
real
jump on
quick.
that, Adam, right away. That's RVT, okay? And 10% of your salaries come from federal funding, and I understand that. The rest is up to the city to pay. We, the city, have not gone after any of that.
You don't think that's accurate, Bonnie?
This is what Adam told us at the meeting.
No. You misunderstood then. The city of Williamsport pays $205,000 a year out of a $7 million budget. The rest is state and federal funding that pays the salaries here.
Municipals too.
We also have other municipal partners that make up the difference from the 205,000 to 347,000. But the majority of the funds for RVT are through the COA, which you guys recently approved the local match for the $205,000 of the COA funds. The state recently approved the RVT budget at almost $7 million that they'll be issuing to RVT.
Insurance. Do you want me to cover the insurance?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The insurance,
Just
we do
here
not.
really quick before we jump into the insurance, just Adam, you're right, Adam. You know, I ran some numbers here today, and I had asked this question last year when we were going over the budget, even though I wasn't able to vote on this budget. We were fortunate enough to ask questions. You know, 81% or 81.5% of RVT's budget is federal and state funded. Okay. So but it's still taxpayer money, number one. But more importantly,
I'm not disputing that.
Yeah,
at all.
but more importantly, you know, the question that I asked last year, I mean, what if that goes away? If that goes away, we have a massive obligation to meet somehow. And while I know there are other, you know, ratepayers, shareholders, what have you, as a part of the organization, at the end of the day, if you look at this contract, it's the city of Williamsport that's on the hook for it. You know, that may be right or wrong. That's a different debate. The city is on the hook for that. And, you know, with all I know there's a lot of money flying around there right now, but that ain't going to last forever. And who knows, you know, there's so much uncertainty that we could be on the hook for. And secondly, you know, I would still argue that it's the fact that it is still at least a part of the city, even in a normal situation. The point that I brought up in finance was that if you look at the city's balance sheet and you look at the city's net position, we're $75 million in the hole. The largest liability that the city has across the board between RVT, between the city proper, it's the post-employment benefits. It's by far the largest, $145 million. You know, I know that the city faces this every year, but it needs to be tackled. That's how we ensure the city stays solvent. That's how we ensure the city stays fiscally healthy. We need to find a better way to ensure that we take care of the people that serve the city well, serve them long, but that doesn't bankrupt the city. So I just wanted to clarify that point before jumping into some of the items that Frank was going to talk about.
Thanks, Adam. Mr. Paczynski.
Yeah, the item that I wanted to talk about was the insurance. You said we have full coverage for our retirees. You're talking 65 and above. All we have is supplemental insurance. We do not have full insurance. That is other parts of the city that's got that has a spouse and a retiree. We do not have that. It's a single person only, just a retiree. And right now it's at a $500 cap. And what comes out of that right now is $319 goes for the insurance, and $181 is left in an HRA from to buy the prescriptions with, their medicines. So we do not have a full coverage for retirees at all. And right now we have 8 people on that. I just wanted to make sure that was cleared up, that we don't have full coverage for our retirees at all. So I don't know where that came from.
Their primary is Medicare, correct?
Yes, the primary is Medicare and Medicaid, both.
Medicaid, yeah.
And then you have the supplemental insurance that is supplied by the city.
So if we're comparing to other parts of our legacy costs, it's apples to oranges. It's not the same as it is with police and fire.
Correct.
Well, that's certain. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Adam.
Sorry, Randy. My apologies. That may be a very fair point, but apples and oranges add up to a very big number, and apples and oranges can go a long way to helping address the long-term fiscal health of the city. I certainly appreciate that, but they both contribute.
They do, but comparatively, it's a very small percentage. I think we need to talk the dollars and cents. Because otherwise people aren't going to be able to put it into context, the public, that their benefits on healthcare are totally different than for other parts of the city. Other questions from council? Mr. Banks.
Well, like Liz said, I was very happy to see this contract. That we can talk about the 3% over the next 3 years. And, I don't know if John wants to jump in at some point about that too. But ultimately the legacy cost, getting that taken out of the contract for new employees is what we need from all the unions. And it's a great first step. We'll have to come back and negotiate this again in 5 years. And, God willing, most of us are on council at that point to have that conversation, but taking that out was a really good step, and I'm thankful the union was willing to go that route.
Yeah, we've tried to do everything we could to try to cut our costs to help out. This is our second contract. I don't know if you realize that. We already voted on one with Bill Nichols. It never made it to you guys, to council. So once new mayor came in, Mr. Slaughter came in, then we renegotiated all over again, and we gave up more concessions on this one. And we felt that it was the best that we could come up with, because there's other parts of it too. I don't think Adam listed that we've given up. And we all thought it was fair on both sides and doing that. And now we're into the 8th month of the year. So, basically we're looking at a 4-year contract now. We're already down a year almost. We have 4 months left in it. So, when you asked a question about a shorter term contract, the reason we were going for 5 years is trying to get out of that. The only reason that we have 3 contracts right now before you is because 2 of us should have already been done in January. So you would only have 1, and then you have another one next year. So at the 5-year point, that takes us away from that. So there wouldn't be 3 of us in it again. And then down the road, we can negotiate down to maybe a 2 or 3 year contract. But that was our reasoning for trying to do that.
Mr. Mackey.
Yeah, I just kind of like maybe back up what Bonnie and Adam were saying. I'm not comfortable giving anybody a raise at this point, not knowing where the city's going to be in a few years. And I can comfortably blame that on COVID. COVID or not, pandemic or not, supplemental or not, I think that the city of Williamsport needs to get out of the lifetime benefits business. And for me, that's the biggest thing. And again, RVT, unfortunately, is the first contract to come up before this council. But I think the city of Williamsport needs to draw a line in the sand and say, we have to get out of lifetime benefits, the business of lifetime benefits, because and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's unheard of for a city this size to offer something like that, whether it's supplemental or not.
Well, you're comparing $500 to a couple $1,000 in comparisons, if you want to know the numbers.
No, I understand that, but my point is, supplemental or not, I think the city of Williamsport needs to get out of the lifetime benefits business altogether.
And that's why new hires now coming in here will not have that option. And they will pay more insurance on the copays than we are too. That'll be a 3% to 5%. 3% for single family, 5% for a family of whatever they have.
I'll defer to other members.
Thank you.
Mr. Palizzi, you haven't had a chance to talk yet.
That's okay. I've just been sitting back here listening to everybody. So, I too am mirroring the same feelings as Councilman Yoder, Councilman Mackey, and Councilwoman Katz. Looking down through this, when you see these wage increases, again, I keep going back to what's always in the back of my mind. Is this what's best for the residents of the city that elected us to these positions right now? And as Councilman Mackey had stated, we're moving into the future and we don't know what's in front of us right now, largely in part because of what happened with the coronavirus. As far as wage increases, I currently don't know of anybody that's giving out wage increases, let alone 3%, 3%, 3%, 2.5%, 2.5%. As Bonnie had stated before, I know a standard COLA could be 2.5%. I've looked through this and I've also seen that there's no residency requirement. So as somebody that has to live in the city to hold my office, to represent the members of the city and every single other person that lives in the city, we're going to feel the brunt of any kind of a tax increase based on what we pass, what we allow to happen. So with that, it'd be really easy for me to live elsewhere and say, well, I would like this, and I would like this, and I would like this, when I don't have to pay for it. Now, don't get me wrong, gentlemen, I think this is a great starting point. I was very happy to hear where you guys did end up meeting in the middle, but personally, I still don't think we're there yet. I also was reading down through Article 18, not nearly as big as legacy benefits, but something as simple as you're still going to get paid even when you go to jury duty, for as long as you're going to jury duty. Forgive me, but I don't know of anybody else that does that. There's some things in here that I don't agree with and that I think are still asking too much. And personally, I don't feel, as an elected representative of the city of Williamsport, I don't feel that I could say that this is passable as it is. I ultimately am looking at what I think is in the best interest for our residents. And again, as I stated earlier in this meeting, we lost out on so much tax revenue because of coronavirus. I can't help but wonder, what are our property taxes? What are our taxes going to look like next year just to make up for what we weren't able to get this year because of COVID? Those numbers are all over the place. Somebody threw out numbers today. Now, mind you, that these aren't checked numbers, but somebody said they expect to see our taxes go up 3 mils next year. just to make up for the loss of revenue that we didn't get this year. So those are the things that always have in my mind when I look at anything like this, and I ask myself, is this what's in the best interest for Williamsport and for the residents of Williamsport in the long run? And so I think it's a great starting point. I was happy to see that there was good negotiations on both sides, but I can't honestly say that I feel that I would feel confident in voting yes to this.
Mr. Banks.
So we do talk, and I do it too. We talk a lot about the residents, the taxpayers, but we also need to consider our employees in the situation. We've been given a fair contract, and I know we're worried about COVID-19 and how it's going to affect the budget next year. But we have employees on the line right here. You know, we're talking about this contract. So I'm concerned about what's going to happen with taxes next year. You know, we'll all have to pay that raise in taxes, and it's bleak. However, you know, we have a contract of our employees that we are also responsible to before us, and it's a fair contract. So I think we need to consider that when we're looking at this.
Ms. Mealy.
Thank you, Randy. I would agree, Dave. I think that that's a very important point to make, that when we go into negotiations with our employees, whatever union it may be, what we are asking is that they consider our financial situation and that they do the best they can for us, given that all of us have needs and all of us have wants in the process. I would agree that we always hope for more in any contract negotiation. However, I would say that I do feel that there have been concessions made in this case, and that this is a fair contract, fairly negotiated. That we need to bear in mind that each of our contracts will be different, and that all of the contract negotiations have to proceed differently, depending on the union, depending on the impact of the taxpayers. I would just encourage my fellow council members to consider the needs, yes, of the taxpayers, but also of our employees who have negotiated this in good faith, and to take our obligations to both things seriously. We need to be concerned about our taxpayers. We also need to be concerned about our working environment, providing a good working environment, negotiating in good faith with our union. Thank you.
You're saying that hires within the city?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just 1 second before I do that.
Other, Mr. Yoder.
Yeah, no, Councilwoman Mealy, I certainly appreciate the perspective, and very much agree that, you know, we do have multiple negotiations, and, you know, they are going to each be different. The thing that I have been coming back to throughout everybody else's comments, though, seems to be a consistent, I think, question item that I still believe needs to be addressed, and it is these post-employment benefits. I think that question, that offering, is consistent across all of our unions. So I would ask my fellow council members to keep that in mind as well, as we wind down the discussion and go towards a vote.
And I think we will. I think it's important to, let me just say, I've been on both sides of this. Board, I negotiated with the union. I belonged to a union for 40 years and saw negotiation from that side. And now I'm seeing them back from this side again. My perspective, historically, some of the things we're talking about tonight are normally handled before the contract comes up for a vote. Otherwise,
Thank you.
I think there are legal ramifications in ways that contracts are handled going forward, where you can lose all the concessions that you think you gain, and you can lose more. I just want everyone to be considerate of some of those things. Our HR, Joellen.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to point out for the post-retirement benefits for our current employees, we have contractual obligations to them. So they came to the city, we offered them employment, we said their benefits were going to be X. And now they're looking to change those benefits. And I just think that we definitely, you know, we have an obligation to them. And I just would ask council if they would invest in their greatest asset for the city, which is their employees. That's all I want to say. I think that it was a good contract, fair contract, both sides give, take. But the new employees coming in will address the issue of the post-retirement benefits. And I think that's what we all want here. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Allison, Frank would like to say one more thing if he could, please.
Sure. And then I'll go to Mrs. Katz after that. Mr. Kuczynski?
If it would, I just talk, you see me walk around the room and talk to my members in here, my executive board. And you were talking about wanting us to try to, originally, Vince, when you talked to me about it 2 weeks ago, you asked about our new hires moving in, being into the city to be hired for RVT. Am I correct?
That's correct.
If we were willing to do that, would that help in your voting process? Would that set better with the rest of you? Because I see you have like 4 of you concerned with that, the tax base.
I can't speak for everyone else here. That I know would personally make me feel better. However, there are still some other concerns that I have, but particularly, you know, when I look at the 5-year wage increases. Please don't get me wrong. I don't want to take away what you guys do day in and day out and what you have to deal with. I think to be fiscally responsible right now for the city, I think 3 years at 3% is too high.
Well, the reason we went with those figures is because of starting to pay for our insurance and trying to get the rest of my 51 members on board with doing that is why we went with the 3%, knowing that we're going to have to pay 2% in our insurance. And that would help offset that for everyone.
Mrs. Katz, you've had your hand up.
Bonnie, you're muted.
We do appreciate all of our employees. They are our greatest asset. I will agree with you on that. And that's why we're looking at this so conscientiously, because with the way our finances might be next year and the year after, we may be having layoffs. And if we start having layoffs, that's going to upset the apple cart even further. And this is why I think looking at the 3% just gets me upset in my stomach thinking, okay, we're going to have these raises. Are we going to be able to cover this? If not, we're going to have to lay off people. And, you know, as it is without these raises, it's a question that's already been discussed. So, you know, these are our reasons. It's not the 51 people, Frank, that you have. We have to be careful of where we go. We have 29,000 people that are counting on us to watch their dollars and where their dollars are spent. and how much taxes they have to pay. Yes, we all have to pay for our medical insurance. It all comes out of our pockets, and we understand that. We on council, we pay for our medical insurance. We didn't get a raise. We have to deal with it. It's one of those things that come up in life. And, you know, other companies always make sure they take an amount out of your paycheck for your insurance. That's part of your benefits. I know you're trying to appease everybody, and you're trying to make everybody happy, but please understand, we may eventually have a deficit here that we're not going to be able to cover. And if you look at it realistically, that's where we're coming from.
The other thing, do you realize we're one of the lowest paid authorities in the state? I don't know if you know those figures either. And as far as the city, there's other parts of the city with truck drivers and things that are paid more than we are also. So
Frank, but you have to look at our city in general of where the pay scale is throughout the whole city. It's just not you, it's the whole city where the pay scale is and where our taxpayers' money goes. Our taxpayers are what pays everybody's salaries. And this is what we look at. You know, it's, we can understand, everybody would like to make more money. And you know, anything that goes up, salary goes up, where are we going to get the money from? You know, I appreciate all of this. I really do. We go through this, you know, in our own budgets in our own home. And it's hard. It's hard to deal with. But please understand, we do appreciate everything that everybody does. But we do have to be careful where we go.
I understand that, but do we need to make all the concessions now on us, since we're the first ones in that's going to get the bloody nose compared to the rest of the 2 contracts that's coming in here too? I mean, seeing now we're the first ones to come with our contract. I mean, I don't feel that it's fair that you're going to, I got to take this off. I can't breathe this thing. I don't think that it's fair that if we're going to get the bloody nose, you know, the first kid on the playground, I don't feel that that's fair. It should be spread out through the whole city. If everybody's going to make concessions, then that's fair. But if it's going to be just us making concessions, I don't feel that it's fair as far as all my 51 brothers and sisters in my union that I'm very passionate about. And, you know, so therefore that's what I'm looking at. And I realize that we have a tax base and all that. And I realize that we've already got $7.4 million allotted to us and another 2.4 with a total of $9.9 million for operations. And we also have everything else in the city with the other municipalities that's giving us money, the state, the federal, and this is just part of it. Plus, we also have the money that comes from the buses. When people pay for their passes, pay for their anything to ride the bus. And, you know, we have the CNG station out here. Where does that gas money go? I thought that was designated RBT. And also the rental properties downtown, Trade and Transit 1 and 2, where does that money go? So that's why I have a problem with all the money that I see in front of me. And then now it's not going to us. I mean, I don't understand.
Frank, I'll speak for myself here, but I think everybody else will say the same thing. Everybody's going to be treated equally with this.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I know in the past it hasn't went that way, but if that's the way it would be in the future. I've been here, I don't know if you realize, I've been here 35 years. So I've been through quite a few contracts. I've been involved with the union most of the time that I've came here. And it's a good union. And we have a lot of good representation here. So I wouldn't want to see anything happen to that. Sorry if I'm overstepping my bounds here at all.
No, we're
I'm very, very passionate about my people.
And we appreciate that, Frank.
Well, Frank, you should. That's, you know, you should, because you do have good people and you all work together well. I mean,
a lot of good people here. It's one big family.
Yes, exactly.
And since we got Adam here now helping us out, we've made our family even bigger.
Mr. Banks, you have your hand up.
Well, I would just like to bring up that the fact that we're talking about a resolution here, we're not negotiating the contract right now. The contract has been negotiated.
It's true.
Thank you.
So it's really important that we don't lose a good contract in something that's not a negotiation. I think we really need to keep that in mind, because what I see happening right now is scaring me, quite frankly, because we've gotten good concessions in there. The concessions a lot of us ran on last year, which was these legacy issues. And I just really think that we need to take a breath, right now and realize what we're talking about. We're talking about the resolution. The contract is before us already. We've already reviewed it. We've had a chance to talk amongst ourselves about it prior to this meeting. So I really think it's important that we just keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Banks. You bring up a good point. There are labor laws that we have to be cognizant of as far as management. So I think everyone's had a fair hearing. And I'm going to ask Mr. Lubin to call the vote. If that's, are you available, Mr. Lubin?
Yes, wanted to make sure no one else wanted to speak. Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
No.
Mr. Pelisi,
No.
Mr. Mackey,
No.
Mrs. Katz,
No.
Ms. Mealy, Ms. Mealy,
You're muted, Liz.
Randy, I apologize. There were a couple of conversations going on. What was the question for me?
We're voting.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes, motion fails 3-4. We'll move to item 4. Would you read that in short form, Mr. Lubin?
Number 4 is an ordinance amending Part 1 of the codified ordinances of the city of Williamsport.
Thank you, Mr. Lubin. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
This was reviewed in finance. Ms. Mealy, do you want Mr. Yoder to?
I apologize, Randy. What was that?
We're at the ordinance amending the codified ordinances.
The codified ordinances. Well, Mr. Yoder, I think probably has quite a lot to say about this.
Yeah, I just wanted to check with the chair first.
But the committee voted to send it to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. And Mr. Yoder gave us quite an explanation about the entire thing. Most of our discussion, I think, really revolved around this being basically a technique for putting things in an order that closely resembles the order that we currently utilize in the city, and gives some guidance as to who should seek the approval of whom, et cetera. Because our current ordinance doesn't really match how we do business. But all of that said, this is kind of a first step that has a clause that will bring it back to our attention annually. The idea being, assuming that clause actually has any teeth, that next year we can look at what we've done and see if we can fine tune it. And that is perhaps the part that really interests me the most. Is I think we have some opportunities to think about how we organize the branches of our government, and to make it a little better, and to better utilize those branches by an organizational system. And this is the first step in that, but I think we can go further with that as the years go on.
Thank you, Ms. Nealon. Mr. Yoder.
And Liz, thank you for pretty much summing up everything I was going to say. So thank you. No, so what you have before you, it's an ordinance that updates part 1 of the codified ordinances of the city of Williamsport. So essentially what this does, it updates specifically articles 121, 135, and 139 of the administrative code, which are existing departments and departments generally, outlining what department is in what. And then this also creates 2 new articles in the administrative code, articles 141 and 142. So currently, we have formally 3 departments: the Department of Administration, the Department of Public Safety, Department of Community and Economic Development. This would update it to break out Public Works and the Williamsport Bureau of Transportation, River Valley Transit, to adequately reflect how we're operating currently. In addition to that, and what really drove this for me was really looking at ensuring that future councils did not have or had the proper accountability mechanisms for future administrations. I think it's pretty well known for a number of years we've had multiple people serving in multiple roles, and the council has not had very much, if any, ability to ensure that, number one, the proper people were in the proper places, but number 2, the things were happening correctly. So this ordinance expands the advisory consent capabilities of city council. We have seen for years past various department heads not being filled. This modifies the verbiage to make it a requirement, essentially saying that they shall be filled. This eliminates the abilities of department directors to take on multiple positions within city government without council approval. So just to make sure that we're not putting individuals, future administrations, and the city at risk by having people stretched thin too much. Provide some basic guidance to city council on the removal of department heads. We can't do that. We can recommend that a department head be removed, whether it's due to not performing their job, legal action, or what have you, but we can make that recommendation. So it acts as a trigger to for future councils, if that happens, that they know they can do that. But most importantly, as Councilwoman Mealy had mentioned, this introduces an annual review during the capital budget process to force us all, between the administration and council, to have the discussion of are things properly in line? Are we serving our constituents in a way that is efficient and advantageous, most advantageous to the taxpayer, but also ensures that this doesn't lay stagnant for decades. In my exploration of reworking this and updating this, this has only been addressed twice since the early 1970s, when we became an optional third-class city. First in the 80s, and then most recently, I think in 2004, 2005. So this is very easily able to lay there and get outdated, as we've seen. So this forces us to revisit that. And so I would welcome any questions that anybody may have before continuing to blab on and bring up a couple additional things. So
the floor is open. Mr. Bank.
Not really much to say. I mean, this has been the works for a while, and we're glad Adam took it by the horns and and went for it. You know, we just need to clean some of this stuff up, and this will take care of that. So thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
I'm wondering what took so long.
Well, a thoughtful process is always helpful.
Very much so.
Yes, and I too thank you for your time. We have this one, and we're going to have another ordinance that Mr. Mackey worked on. I know you both put a lot of time into these, and before I forget, want to thank both of you for this, your time and effort. Mrs. Katz.
I think like everybody else, we want to thank Adam for all the hard work. I mean, this was not easy to put together and to clarify a lot of the positions that are in City Hall. And I think it's going to be helpful for everybody. And thank you again, Adam.
There were a couple of things in kind of going over this in prep for tonight that that I had noticed and that were brought to my attention. There is the first big thing. Well, the first thing, so regarding recreation, Randy, this is something that you had brought up in committee.
Yeah.
I don't have, I didn't specifically list recreation either as a function, bureau, department, or what have you within. If that is something that council wants to do, we can do that. You know, we could certainly wait and do that next year upon an annual review. That gives the administration some time to understand where it suits their needs best and what have you. So that's one thing that I would throw out to council.
I think the mayor already moved recreation over to streets and parks. So I think that's where, Mayor, you would like to see it at this point under streets and parks?
Yeah, I think that would make the most sense for me there. You know, you have the Department of Public Works. If you're looking at Councilman Yoder's proposed, and I believe it was discussed on Tuesday there, where the Bureau of Parks and Public Facilities.
Yeah.
That would make the most sense to me. There's one other, if I may, real quick. If you're looking at the proposed graphic for Bureau of Codes and Zoning, that's under Department of Public Safety. Just one minor, it's just a minor update. You have zoning still. If you look at the ordinance 140.01 has it under the Department of Community and Economic Development. I think you want to move zoning to be up under where you have it to match the graphic. Just a minor update.
Yeah, to add on to that, the additional thing that was brought to my attention was the redevelopment authority is listed under community economic development. That was actually taken out in 2018. So when I started this process, I was working off of an older version of the codified ordinances. So that actually should not be in there. So Mayor Slaughter, to your point, there is a couple of structural things that fell through the cracks on my end administratively that we could certainly switch up through an amendment to this easily.
Yeah, back to the recreation. I had a conversation with Mayor Slaughter today, and we talked about putting recreation directly under the Bureau of Streets and Parks. Makes sense. That's the two places they interact a lot. So I wondered if we could amend that tonight just to take care of that and get it. I just feel like it's kind of hanging out there now, and it is a department, and it does have the director. So, Mr. Banks.
So just to clarify, I'm looking at the graphic, and we have a Bureau of Streets and Traffic Control, and there's the Bureau of Parks and Public Facilities. Are we saying we want to put rec in Parks and Public Facilities?
Let me pick that up. I'm being texted and stuff.
Understood.
Hopefully it's not your wife from the other room.
No, man, no, sir, no, sir. No, she's not interested. Mr. Slaughter, did you want to chime in on that?
Say it again. I'm sorry. I missed what Councilman Banks said.
Yeah, so we're talking about the rec department and, you know,
Yeah.
under the Department of Public Works,
Right.
Mr. Yoder broke out
Yeah.
the different bureaus. And Randy had said something like the Bureau of Streets and Parks, but there isn't one of those. There's a Bureau of Streets and Traffic Control, and then the Bureau of Parks and Public Facilities. I was just saying that rec should probably fall under the Bureau of Parks and Public Facilities.
Right. I agree with that. That's what I said here a few minutes ago. Yes, I agree with that. Yep. Okay. I agree. Okay.
Just making sure we have the verbiage right.
Yes, yes. No, I agree that that recreation should fall under Bureau of Parks and Public Facilities. Yes, yes. Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, we can make an amendment to list that underneath that if we would like to, or if you would like us to, Mayor Slaughter. I don't know if vagueness is the right term or what have you, but the thought of having a lot of these departments pretty vague was on purpose at this point, just to make sure you have the flexibility to move components of these individual departments around as your administration continues to evolve and what have you. So we can certainly list it under there. That's certainly fine. Your call.
So yeah, the only other one while we're talking about this, emergency management has been under fire for about 20 years or so. So that was the only other piece that I was going to bring up. Oh, well, I guess one other area too is if we're looking at a director for each of these, and for example, if we're looking at right now, we could realize some cost savings for Chief Hagan, who's the chief of police, but he's also director of public safety. What would the plan be for new directors as far as, you're talking about a lot of money there, especially if it can't be someone who can hold two different positions. So, we're looking at an increase in dollars there, a significant increase, potentially. If it's a director, could be 90,000 or so, depending.
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, certainly. So, in my mind, and from what I had researched and seen, and from other discussion with other members of council, taking the current structure of specifically Public Works, River Valley Transit, and bringing them up to the level of director, in my mind, really doesn't change the organizational structure. So the individuals leading that department were already directors or general managers or what have you. In my mind, I don't know that their salary would necessarily change one way or the other. They're just simply they're just simply being broken out to reflect how they're currently organized within the city government. So, like, for example, Mr. Winder is I think his official title is general manager of RVT, but that wouldn't change. That individual would still be that. They would just formally in the code be reporting directly to the mayor, and would formally be a director. And I've heard it a number of times last year, the past couple of years, and sitting here, we talk about streets and parks, the director of streets and parks. That position is already there legally and technically. It's just not a director because it's a sub-department of the Department of Administration in the current code. So by simply keeping that organizational structure and breaking it out and bringing it up to a formal director level, it doesn't really change the position, the job description, or what have you. It just simply updates where it is on the org chart realistically. So I don't really know that there is much of a cost impact with those specifically.
Okay, the only other, one last question, if I may. The Bureau of Transportation Technology and the Bureau of Information Technology, could we possibly combine those into just, I mean, to me, I would see technology, just one.
Yeah.
That was a suggestion that I have.
Yeah, certainly. So just from looking at the budget and a couple other transit organizations, it seemed like that was close to how they were operating. I mean, if it's not and that needs addressed and changed, we could certainly do that. Absolutely. So that was the intent. The intent was to align it with as close as I knew of how RVT was operating. And again, obviously with the intent of as your administration adjusts various departments, what have you, we update that yearly. So that way it's adequately reflected in the laws and in the books. So,
Mr. Yoder, if I could jump in on that, that's Chris. Josh and I over the last 3 years have worked very hard to sort of bring the IT departments, if you will, of the city and RVT back together. At one point, they were somewhat more combined, and then there was a period where there was very little conversation between the two, and we ended up with a lot of dissimilar systems in doing that. So, from my perspective, it would be wise for the city to combine those, and so we can have continuity across all departments.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point, and that is something that I had actually discussed with Councilwoman Mealy about that idea. In some other discussions with other council members, and by all means chime in. I don't need to be sucking up the oxygen here. With the prior, with the prior direction that had seemed to be going on with regionalization of River Valley Transit, as well as the fact that we have such complicated funding streams of River Valley Transit, it seemed wise and seemed consistent with other transit authorities that we probably keep those separated so that we don't get ourselves into a bind, whether it's legally or what have you. It's a bit of a unique thing, I think, that we face as the city of Williamsport. We're the only city in the state that has a transit organization under it. I think until we probably have a longer term plan of what is going to happen with RVT, if regionalization still is the direction that's going to go, it just seemed less complicated and cleaner, at least in the short term, to do that. For my research and understanding, doesn't mean that those two departments can't work together at all, or even work closely together. But it does seem that funding wise, that needs to be adequately tracked, regardless if it's one department or not. So it seems that, and from talking with other members of council, keeping them separated would make that process easier. But
hey, Adam, I have a question for you. This is John Santa, by the way. Did you come up with this all by yourself, or I guess did you create this, or were you looking at similar cities similar size to Williamsport, or how did you develop this? I guess what I'm getting at.
yeah, so it's strictly a couple of different things based off of how historically we've kind of informally been operating, and how we still kind of are. In addition to that, it lines up with the 6 other third-class optional charter cities. Public Works is a very consistent and common department within all those other cities. Again, the Bureau of Transportation is not, we're the only city in the entire state, to my knowledge, that has a transportation arm in it. The others throughout the state are regional authorities. But that's primarily what I worked off of, was how are we doing it? How do we have it reflect where we're at today? But how do we ensure that we're continuously looking at it, finding that balance of flexibility for the administration as city government evolves, but ensuring that there's the accountability mechanisms that are needed. That was the big thing. So
Thank you.
yep.
Yeah. Oh, Chief.
Go ahead, sir. I can wait my turn.
Well, I just wanted to come back to the mayor's point with the different technology bureaus. And I know we have hammered this point so many times over the past few months, but you know, they're doing time studies over at RVT. So could we not just do a time study for those individuals and just have them under the same bureau, the Bureau of Information Technology? And then if RVT at some point in time were to be removed, you know, they could take their person or hire a person for that position. You know, they would have their own separate structure at that point, is what I'm saying. They would be creating their own structure. So it really wouldn't make much of a difference if we had a separate bureau for them in a structure that would be extra governmental at that point in time. In terms of combining the two departments is what I'm getting at. The bureaus, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, again, that was the rationale and thought process. Again, this is a starting point, and again, the thing to keep in mind. I mean, like I said, there were a couple of you know, things that probably like the redevelopment authority thing that I had caught, but you know, we can certainly move stuff around and change it however we want. Keep in mind, we're going to be doing this annually as well. So I think we've got time and what have you to address a number of these as well as city government continues to evolve.
Can I suggest something at this point?
Yeah.
We have discussed it a lot, and it was discussed in committee, and it's been discussed all along, and there have been changes made. And we're talking about a couple separate things tonight that they're not big issues. So perhaps we're going to vote again on this in 2 weeks. Perhaps we could vote it tonight and then work on some of these things in the interim. And
sure.
If we need to amend, then we can have it more thoroughly talked out and discussed by then, or checked out on our own. Chief Hagan, is that your hand?
Yes, sir, it was. I just wanted to say a few words about this. I have a few concerns. First of all, I would like to compliment the effort on the part of Councilman Yoder. I think that this is a very well-balanced task organization chart, and it makes sense. And certainly 5 people directly answering to the mayor is easier than 8 or 10 or 12 or however many have been over these many years. However, for whatever reason, in these last 40 years, prior administrations have failed to fill these positions, as the councilman indicated. And so we are now where we are, where they're not funded. At least those, obviously community and economic development is, but administration has not been for most of the last 40 years, and neither has public safety. So there's the way it is on paper, and then the way it would be if we tried to actually make this happen. Much has been said tonight about the burden on the taxpayer. A lot has been said about the burden on the taxpayer, and department heads have been talking about this for several days now and how we think it might actually play out. There's a couple of things to consider. One is, if you want somebody from within the units of government that already exist to be elevated to the director position full time, then you're going to be taking them from another position that needs to be filled. In the case of public safety, the fire department had 3 administrators, and they just recently went down to 2 and cannot operate with only 1 for very long efficiently. The police department also a year and a half ago went from 3 to 2, and I can assure you, we can't operate with less than 2 either, not efficiently. So to take one of us and make us full-time would then require some cut in manpower, either in the police, fire department, whoever you elevated. And if you made a full-time director, obviously I'm the director now, but if it was a full-time director, that would be, you're creating essentially a new slot in public safety. In public works, to take somebody from streets and parks, you have an issue there, and it might exist in public safety as well, where if you replace the director, right now as the chief, under our current contract, if I was replaced as chief, I go back to my last held rank. But in public works, I don't believe it is that way. And if they were to go back, they wouldn't maintain seniority and things like that. So you're unlikely to get somebody without major changes to want to step up, even if they did live in the city. And that's the other hurdle. You have a residency requirement now for those directors that haven't been chosen. And there are a lot of qualified people maybe, but they might not be willing to move into the city. So these are things that are going to drive this issue to the hiring of another person and the decision as to whether you want to cut manpower in order to do that, to stay within the existing budget, or whether you have to increase taxes in order to be able to afford it. So these are just things that have come up that we've been, like I said, that have been tossed around between some of those of us who work in the administration. I just wanted to mention it because we all like the idea of having directors like this, more accountability, more efficiency, transparency, all of those things. But the question is how to pay and what to cut if we can't do it. Like with RVT, certainly that's an easy, you just elevate the current leaders that are there. But in at least 2, if not 3 of the other finance, I look there, that looks like it might be a new position as well, in order to keep all the personnel. I could be wrong, but it looks like it. Certainly public safety and public works would probably be an additional position. So I just wanted to mention that as you deliberate on how we're actually going to make this that's on paper that looks good actually happen.
Yeah, Chief, I certainly appreciate that, because and on our last item that was on the agenda, it was certainly one that was talking about that. I get that, I respect that, and that was certainly on my mind, like I had said before, we have had multiple different people over the years serving in multiple different roles. We've had success with it. We have not had success with it. I think, whenever you look at that specifically, as far as updating it in the ordinance, I think that's very much a case-by-case basis that I think really comes down to, the goal there is just making sure that there's an added level of accountability, ensure that it's thought through, right? To your point about the directors, I certainly understand that and had really thought about that as well. I like you had said with River Valley Transit, that's really no impact, right? With public works, I would argue there's not really much of an impact than there already is. Somebody's going to lead that group within the city of Williamsport. It was previously Mr. Winder. I don't know the mayor's plans, but I would suspect that there is going to be somebody leading that organization. So all this simply does is updates that organization specifically. The one really in question, to your point, is the director of finance and administration, and I purposely changed that. And we may want to have this debate now, or we may want to do it in 2 weeks. Is there the purposely changing that? Administration is one of the department heads that has not been filled for years. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, I'm a believer in structure. very much so. That's challenging for us because we are in a interesting and unique financial climate for sure. The thought process was, is there a way to formalize and organize that department by moving things around so that we're not creating another position? The mayor, for example, has the director of finance position open. Is that a role where we house human resources, IT, if that is a standalone department separate from RVT, to provide some structure, to provide some little bit more clarity to help the mayor's efforts and the administration's efforts in doing the day-to-day business of city government. That was purposely done to spur that conversation and debate. So I get it, and I very much appreciate that. So that's in the back of my mind as well. So. I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are on that.
I think that all the minds are running right now. All the gears are spinning.
Yep.
Well, to that effect, Councilman Allison, were you saying earlier that we should possibly table this for 2 weeks? Or to have the vote now and then at the second reading have, amendments or changes?
At this point, since at that point, we were just talking about a few minor things. So yeah, I would suggest if we, yeah, it would be a table if we have larger issues, I would think, to work out. But I mean, that's up to council. Mrs. Katz.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Don't you just hate that? Seriously. Can't wait till we're back to human places here. I think we passed this tonight, and within the interim for the second reading, clean up what the mayor has suggested, what the chief has suggested, to see where we can, clean up some of it. And I think we all realize it's like anything else we've learned. Randy, you and I and Liz, over the years, we have passed resolutions, ordinances, and at times they've changed because we found out that we needed to either add, subtract, or whatever to clean things up. And I think this is what's going to happen. And I think this is what you have said, Adam, in the very beginning. I think as a whole, this is a good process. This is a good starting point. And I think since you've gotten some input at this point tonight, we can make some amendments at the second reading. That would be my suggestion.
Well, can we make those if they're entirely changing the structure of the ordinance, can we make those as amendments?
We can.
Okay.
Yeah, if someone's prepared to make a motion for an amendment, we can move on that tonight.
Do we want to do amendments tonight, or do we want to digest some of this tonight? Adam, what do you think?
I'll go with the full body of council. It's I would argue whatever the other six of you and the administration are more comfortable with. So.
The chief brought up a point. Randy brought up the point, and I agree, like with Rec and the mayor, there are certain things just to clean up. And I think, why can't we email you with where we wanted to see the cleanup for in 2 weeks with amendments?
Certainly.
We took notes on what the mayor said, what the chief has said, and we can go from there.
Yes, some of them were not big things and can easily be accomplished. Some of these other ones are going to be more in-depth conversations with possible financial implications. So that's a different Horse of a different color, I think.
Understood.
So,
I can see where the chief is saying financial. Those are ones that we really do have to be careful with. But I still would like to go forward with this. At least we have it moving. This has been on, everybody's radar since January almost. Again, here is something that has been on the radar for so long. And I really don't want to see this delayed because of some things that we would like to work on and clean up.
I would agree with you there, Councilman Katz. The one thing that I think that the chief brought up that's really important to keep in mind is that we're not one, trying to overwork our directors, these people that are going to be going into these positions, that we're not asking them to do things that they don't already do, or that we're not willing to compensate them in the case that we are asking them to do things that they don't already do, or changing the structure of their jobs. So, in our amendments or our suggestions for 2 weeks from now, I think it's good to keep that in mind.
yeah, definitely. It's not, from the outside, people might think it's an easy task. It's not, because the structure of the city government evolved on its own organically over the last few decades with some very competent, and loyal employees that worked hard and did a lot of different tasks, doubled up on things and filled gaps when they saw them, and it worked for them. At this time, it's always been my argument that city government's a lot more complicated than it's ever been, with a lot more ramifications and things to take into consideration. So that the old model doesn't quite work. And again, thanks to Councilman Yoder for using that as the impetus to begin to give us the structured, identify what we need. And I think we're in the process of doing that. So we do have a motion and a second that's on the floor. So I'm just going to call for the vote on that, the straight up and down vote, and we'll get to work in the interim. Mr. Lubin, on the motion, please.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Plizzi,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes,
Ms. Muley,
She's muted. She may not be available.
okay, Mr. Allison.
Yes,
Okay, so it's
motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Lubin. We'll move on to our next ordinance, item 5. Would you read that in short form, please, Mr. Lubin?
an ordinance creating Accessibility Advisory Commission of the City of Williamsport and authorizing said Accessibility Advisory Common to develop a recommended plan for the City of Williamsport's accessibility compliance efforts and outreach.
Thank you, Mr. Lubin. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. This was reviewed in Public Works. We kind of have the same situation we just had. I'll defer to Councilwoman Katz as chairman, but it was Councilman Mackey who spearheaded this project. So
yes, he did. And again, thank you for another councilman that came up with another ordinance, which is fantastic. This was passed to the full body of council with a positive recommendation, and I'll let John speak on this.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, again, as I said in Public Works, I don't think it's a question of the support to get this commission formed. I think that it's just a question of the details of how this commission is going to work. As it's written now, this commission will assist in evaluating the accessibility of the City of Williamsport's facilities, programs, activities, and services citywide. It will make recommendations for needed improvements citywide. It will provide guidance in developing the City of Williamsport's access policy and a plan for action, serve as an access, resource, and review mechanism, which may include consultation on new programs, policies, projects, and services citywide, assist in educating city administration, staff, city constituents, and businesses concerning disability services and access issues, and will also advocate the inclusion of accessibility awareness to equity, diversity, and inclusion conversations. I will just note right out of the gate in section 4, again, I don't know if this brings us to the same problem we just had, but the more I think about it, the more I think that there should be a member of council on this commission. I currently have it set up as 5 members, all city residents, but I also think that we should add a member of city council to this, and I'm obviously willing to hear everybody's opinion on that.
Randy, could I chime in?
Yes. Ms. Wheeler.
John, I would agree that I think we need at least a few members of the administration to sit on the commission. Are the only voting members from my reading were the 5 committee members, were the 5 members of the public, correct?
Yes.
I would think it might be wise to have membership from city government and members from the public, and to have the number of members more or less equal. But I would once again defer to everyone else, but that was one of my questions for you. Why did you make it? I mean, both make sense. We have the planning commission, which all of the voting members on the planning commission are members of the public. We also have multiple committees that feature several members of council. We have a couple that are members of council, members of city government mix, but not many. I was just trying to figure out what the thought process was on exclusively citizen members.
I mean, I think my thought was that they were going to be making recommendations that council was going to vote on. So having a member of council on the commission was a little redundant maybe, but I also think an argument could be made, to have members of the administration on the commission to help kind of guide the commission and be there as a resource more so than a voting member.
Got it. I think that either approach is fine. I was just trying to understand, and the purview of the commission currently is exclusively to look at city activities, not to review other items like land developments or anything like that for the city in terms of accessibility. Is that we still figure is being taken care of by zoning?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Yeah, I apologize, John. I've got a lot of background noise tonight. I said we still figure that that's being taken care of by zoning.
I suppose, but I think that would also be a good something that this commission could handle as well.
I just didn't know quite where our thought process was there. But it did. I guess I had questions about what exactly we considered to be the total purview of the commission, what we the removal mechanism from the commission, which struck me as a little unwieldy, and then also the makeup of the commission. But I'm interested to hear discussion from other members of council. So I'll defer to other members for now.
Mr. Banks?
I think it would be good to have a member of codes on the commission. Maybe the mayor can chime in here. Just in terms of, suggestions are made, it'd be nice to have somebody in the room who can say that makes sense with our ordinances or not.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. I would defer to council, but yeah, that would make sense to me, Councilman.
Mr. Palizzi?
I agree with Councilman Banks. here in page 2, where Mr. Mackey does cite that, he says, as needed, member of codes department, city engineer. I would argue that I would think that a member of codes department and the city engineer would probably be in our best benefit. And along with what Councilwoman Mealy had mentioned, that and Councilman Mackey, that a member of city council would also be a great benefit to act as a direct conduit from this commission directly to council to kind of keep them in direct communication with what's going on.
I agree with both of those. I think it's.
I appreciate that. I didn't hear anything there, so I thought maybe I lost everybody.
Does anyone have any other suggestions? I was going to make an amendment then, or propose an amendment to include the city engineer, a member of the codes department, and a member of council.
I agree with that.
Those are permanent attending members, Dave, correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay with? Okay, so I would
Yes.
propose an amendment to include the.
I have a question. How often are meetings? Are we assigning a duration or time? When are these meetings, and what's the structure of this accessibility?
That's right, John. You're going to be thrown into this meeting.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just need to know. Like, I'm just kind of curious as to how often they'll be, when they'll be.
Councilman Beckett, do you have the?
Yeah,
what exactly will we discussing?
yeah, that's not, in my memo, I don't think that got translated into the actual ordinance. I said one time a month initially, and then seeing where things go, we might be able to bump that back to once every 2 or 3 months. But I think that obviously that also has to be in the ordinance as well. And I apologize, it doesn't appear to be in there.
Thank you.
If I have a suggestion, I think you should meet at least once a month for at least the first 3 months until you get organized, and then you can stretch it out longer.
Well, wait,
Don't you
if I
think?
can
Or
interject-
maybe.
If I can interject on that, and appeal to someone who might know more about the structure of committees in code, Norm Lubin. What I'm curious about is, generally speaking, it seems to me that we haven't, that perhaps the meeting times are not stated in ordinances. Is that correct?
That's correct. Generally, no. That way the organization can create how often they want to meet.
Exactly. I mean, it would be my suggestion as a recommendation that they schedule monthly meetings, and then they can choose not to hold them, as happens with council committees on occasion. But I don't think that that's anything that we want to put in an ordinance for them anyway. Because that bothers everybody.
And so in that case, we only need to make one amendment.
God bless you, John.
Thank you.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I have some other concerns, but what we're discussing right now in particular is the makeup of the committee, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
So for that particular question, I think, yeah, that we can amend. I mean, and this is first reading, so we can always make changes either between readings or on second reading. But
I think for this particular ordinance, we could probably make that amendment now, since it seems to be somewhat unanimous.
I would agree.
Are you making that motion?
I am making that motion. So I move to amend the ordinance to include, I'm probably not saying this right, but to include a member of the codes department, the city engineer, and one member of council.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any more discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, could we have the vote on that, Mr. Lubin, please?
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Miss Mealy,
yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes. Motion to amend passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Lubin. No further discussion then.
Hey, Randy, we still have one more item to vote on, which is the addition to the paving contract. I don't know if you skipped over that or.
No, that,
Okay,
yeah. We're gonna get down to that as soon.
just letting you know, I just wasn't sure if you messed it or.
No, I didn't forget it. We still have the main motion on this commission on the floor.
Gotcha.
In case there's any other, are there any other?
I'll make a motion to pass this on.
Well, we have the motion.
We have an amendment to this. Is there any more discussion? Are we going to
That's
vote
right.
on this?
Yeah.
I did have a couple other questions
Yeah.
that I think I raised just a bit ago. Are we okay with addressing those now, Randy?
But certainly, yeah.
Okay. So the other questions I had, the removal process outlined in this, was that what our solicitor said was what? Norm, I guess this is a question for you. There's a removal process that the mayor or city council has to petition the Court of Common Pleas to remove a member of this commission. Is that a standard mechanism for removal for our commissions?
Not really.
Okay, so generally speaking, it seems to me that we
depends
can
on-
simply,
Yeah, on some of them, obviously like zoning, that's controlled by state statute. This one wouldn't be.
okay. I guess I'm just asking about the removal process, not that we're hoping to ever use it, but the removal process strikes me as a little onerous. If it were necessary. John, what was the thought process behind it?
The thought process was that I took that from the Ethics Commission ordinance, so that could have been a holdover from that.
Okay.
I would be okay amending that as well, or taking it out of there.
Well, I mean, we have to have a process for removal.
Right, so I think we need to reword that and think,
Okay.
retool that one.
I think generally speaking, either the mayor or council has the ability to remove members for cause. I think is Norm, is that accurate?
Generally, it's either for cause or for, on some of them, it's failure to appear at meetings. So
Got
if
it.
somebody with unexcused absences just doesn't show up, obviously
Yeah.
you want to remove that person.
That would be number 7, though. That would include number 7, neglect of duty.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but also failure to appear is, they may not be doing their job, which would be neglect of duty, and failure to appear would be something else. It'd be like unexcused absences.
Yeah.
Well, can we incorporate
6 and
that
7
into
should
number
be
7?
combined. Yeah, 6 and 7 should be combined into one. If you want, I could try to work on some language for that.
Okay, yeah, I think that, rather than hashing it out tonight, that might be a wise path. I'm just,
Yeah, let me look at a couple other ordinances and see how it's handled there. And then I'll send around some wording on it, on the change.
okay. And now I'm trying to remember what my other question was. Oh, hang on, I'll defer to other discussion if there is any. That's something we can't make a motion on this time. We can always amend the ordinance next time.
Certainly.
Well, normal, what can we do? We can either add language that you recommend next time.
Yeah, I'll send around a proposed amendment, and then you can just, probably make changes. If you want to make changes off of that, my proposal.
Right,
But
and or we
circulate
can
something.
simply,
Yeah.
simply remove and substitute, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if the language is extensive. Okay, got it. All right, so we can't change that one now. Does anybody else have any further questions or comments?
Just a change of word here on number 11. It just needs to reflect the name of the commission. Because Robert's Rules of Order shall govern the proceedings of the Ethics Commission, but it needs to be
Yeah.
Accessibility Commission.
Just delete, actually, these just delete the words ethics, just be of the commission, that's all.
Yeah, remove ethics. Yeah, that'll work. But that's all.
If you want, I just put that in the next, as part of that other amendment, and that way, just do it all at one time.
That makes sense.
But also, if there's any other changes, anybody has any suggestions on, just let me know.
There's another, I was gonna mention as well, there's another, at least one or two places where it says ethics. And we had talked about that we were gonna have members of the disability community on this commission. Do we need to codify that?
Oh, I apologize, Randy. I think I must have read the memo and thought that it was codified, but it's not in the language, is it?
I don't see it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I just read straight over it because I saw it in the memo. Hey, Randy, might I suggest that maybe we should table this for 2 weeks?
Okay.
If everyone would be okay with that. I don't think another 2 weeks will hurt. And that would give us, it seems as though there's a substantial amount of just kind of cleanup that needs to happen. Everybody agrees that this is a good thing to put in place, but the ordinance is just a little, it needs a bit of tidying before it's ready to get a vote. So I think I might feel more comfortable if I could vote the first time on something that more closely resembled the final product that we were looking for.
Yes.
Okay. Whatever, I'll make a motion to table, I guess, and let the chips fall where they may. All right.
There's a motion to table on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second to table. Mr. Lubin, on the motion to table, please.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes,
Mrs. Smealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes, motion to table passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Lubin. And thanks again, John. We'll carry on. Now we will move to item 8, resolution approving a change order. Would you read that in short form, please, Mr. Lubin?
resolution approving a change order number 1 to the 2019 street reconstruction project.
Thank you, Mr. Lubin. Is there a motion on this?
So moved.
Second.
And there's a second. This was reviewed in Public Works, correct? Yes. No, Finance.
I think it was finance, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Liz, was it finance? Or?
Seems to, yes, it was finance.
it was
Sorry.
finance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Bonnie's on all the committees, so she doesn't know. Don't ask her. I talked about it somewhere, huh, Bonnie?
Exactly.
Mr. Sander.
Yeah, sorry, just sorry to jump in the middle of a live vote. I know I saw Vince laughing when I was doing that. I apologize. I heard a lot of silence. So when you guys were voting on the previous thing there,
Yes.
apologize there. Anyway, this is adding to the city streets paving contract for the year. This would be adding $198,988 to pave the RVT and streets and parking lot in its entirety, less the confiscated police car area and the brush pile area. This will be done obviously by our contractor Big Rock, is currently paving in town. Adam Winder indicated that he has money, the $198,988 through a CCA grant. To justify the price, it's the area to be paved is roughly 25,000 square yards. If you multiply that by the bid price of Big Rock, comes out to be about 180,000, and you add additional complication of paving a parking lot, start and stop, etc. It's justifiable.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Sander. Ms. Mealy.
Not a whole lot to add there. This did come before finance and was forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. The funding pot is one that we've received money through for a number of improvements to River Valley Transit Holdings, and the money is there. The work needs to be done, and in Mr. Sanders' opinion, the amount charged for the work is fair. The only discussion that we had was, as we know, Big Rock is a relatively new company. The city was their largest paving contract at the point at which they received it. So Ms. Katz did ask if the paving that they'd done thus far was satisfactory. And Mr. Sanders said, I think there was one minor issue, but generally speaking, all the work they've done has been of good quality.
Yep.
I'll let Mr. Sander follow up on that if you'd like to.
I have nothing really to add. They've done a good job. We just recently gave them a time extension so they can work all the way in town through the end of October. They're doing good work, and I don't have anything else to add at the moment. They're also paving for UGI when they replace their lines right now, currently.
Right. Mr. Banks.
Well, Mr. Sander, this is just a resurface, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And just for the public's clarification, there's a lot of heavy equipment that drives on top of this
Yeah,
particular
so obviously
surface.
we have a lot of bus traffic, a lot of streets and parks, large vehicle traffic, etc. The parking lot was paved last in 2012. It's cracking right now, and that's where we're at right now. So.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Other comments or questions from council members? Okay, seeing or hearing none, Mr. Lubin, please, on the vote.
Sorry. Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Lubin. We will move right on to item 12, except for filing Finance Committee meeting minutes of July 21st, 2020, Public Works Committee minutes of June 23rd, 2020, Ad hoc City Hall Committee of July 14th, 2020, Williamsport Sanitary Authority and Williamsport Water Authority minutes of June 24th, 2020. Is there a motion in a second from council?
No move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there questions or corrections from council members tonight? Hearing none, on the vote, please, Mr. Rubin.
Mr. Banks,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Allison,
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Rubin. We'll move to announcements. Item 13, the next regular scheduled city council meeting will be held on Thursday, August 27th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Remotely again. Upcoming meetings, Tuesday, August 11th, 4 p.m., the Ad hoc City Hall Committee. Wednesday, August 12th, 3:30 p.m., O&E Pension. Friday, August 14th, 11 a.m., ERC. Friday, August 14th, 12 p.m., Housing Needs. Tuesday, August 18th, 10 a.m., Blighted Property. Tuesday, August 18th, 30 p.m., HARB. Thursday, August 20th, 10:30 a.m. Zoning Hearing Board. Thursday, August 20th, 4 p.m. Board of Health. Tuesday, August 25th, 11 a.m. Historic Preservation, 11:30 a.m. Public Safety, 1 p.m. Finance Meeting, 2:30 p.m. Public Works Meeting. Wednesday, August 26th, 11:30 a.m. Redevelopment Authority, and then we're back to our City Council meeting. Are there any comments from council members tonight? We had a very fun-packed, busy night, so job well done, everyone. Comments or anything from the administration? There are none there. Mr. Lubin, do we have any public comment tonight?
Yes, there's, I think, 4.
Okay. Could you
First
read?
one, okay, the first one is from Karen Koch of 24 East 3rd Street in the city. President of Council Allison, for 3 years, people with disabilities directly impacted by the lack of access in the city of Williamsport asked to develop a disability advisory council. Now the city of Williamsport has this very item on the agenda. Will the COW be inclusive in the development of this council? Will this COW ask residents with disabilities to participate? Will the city of Williamsport select people that are not disabled? Will the members be people that have no knowledge of the barriers in the city? Will the true needs of the disability community be heard? The next one is from Jody Bainey, and that's also 24 East 3rd Street in the city. President Council Allison, a disability committee is a must. Don't exclude people who are not linked to organizations with disabilities. Also ensure your method for soliciting members is accessible to all people for the disability committee. If the members of council would like education on how to do so, please reach out to your local Center for Independent Living. The people with disabilities are the experts. They know best. Ms. Bainey also sent a second one. Why has the mayor not applied for COVID funds for the city? He needs to get his act together. And that was Ms. Bainey again. And the final one is from Joey, Joie, Hawk from RVT, 47 Aspen Lane, Mill Hall, Pennsylvania. I wasn't none too happy to read the article where you say that you can't pay for all this stuff. Are you kidding me? We bust our humps to stay running during this pandemic, yet you all got to work from home and this is the thanks we get. Wow, thanks for nothing. Now this is the second contract that has been voted and approved on by our union, and yet you all still want more. We stripped ourselves of all the incentives of being an RVT driver, and yet you still want us to basically work for free. There are no perks now to being an employee of the city. Go figure. So if you all want to say no for what is in the contract, then you all can drive the buses and see what we go through on a daily basis. Have any of you been down to ride the buses voluntarily? My guess is no. I wonder why. I guess if we sit on a corner with a tin cup, we would be better off, since you all feel that what we voted on isn't what we deserve. That's pathetic. We deserve more, and yet we settled on this contract. RVD even doesn't even take up that much of the city's budget. It is 7%. Wow. That's a lot. LOL. And yet you say we all can't afford the drivers who keep the fine folks of this city commuting to and from work, or to get to the necessities they need. Doesn't city council work part-time and get full benefits? And yet we work full-time and get what? Yet you blame us for taking all the taxpayers' money. Go talk to the other city entities and look at some of the projects in the city to see what they drain the city off before you go asking RVT to take yet another cut anywhere. All I can say is that a no vote to this contract from all of you means you all better buckle up, since we will be forced to go to arbitration. I'm sure that doesn't bother any of you. Besides, it is not any of your livelihoods at stake, is it? Enough is enough. And that's the last one to send us one.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lubin. Mr. Lubin could, well, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.